So welcome everybody to the SMI podcast, where we dive deep into the groundbreaking innovations that are shaping the maritime industry and also improving lives. And in this episode, we're exploring a critical, often overlooked topic, the mental health and well-being of seafarers, and how AI is becoming a vital part of proactive healthcare management. Joining us today are the leaders behind a game-changing partnership between VIKAND, a global pioneer in maritime healthcare and wellbeing solutions, and Danish tech innovator Scoutbase. And together they're leveraging artificial intelligence and digital technology to create a safer, healthier, and more supportive environment for the men and women who keep our ships moving and our economies thriving. Their revolutionary crew welfare technology is designed to encourage seafarers to open up about their mental health challenges through anonymous real-time, wellness data collection. And this AI-powered tool goes beyond traditional methods by using welfare pulse sampling, so we'll find out more about that later on, and friendly nudges to monitor mental health, engage crew members, and enable early interventions when needed. On VIKAND, we have Ronald Spithout, a Managing Director, OneHealth by VIKAND. Ronald has over 30 years of experience in telecommunications, with 20 years in digital applications of mobile satellite communications. He had a 9-year tenure as business unit president at Inmarsat, including 6 years as president of Inmarsat's maritime business, where he was instrumental in driving digitalization at sea. And his key responsibilities at VIKAND are to communicate and grow VIKAND's OneHealth business in the commercial maritime sector by promoting the digital innovation and progressive medical insights of OneHealth to proactively focus on seafarers' overall wellness and not just concentrating reactively on specific illnesses or conditions. And from Scoutbase, we have Yassin Askar, a seasoned service designer. Yassin brings together the worlds of human-centered design and worker welfare. And as co-founder and chief product officer of Scoutbase, he is leading the development of innovative solutions, that gather real-time safety and well-being data directly from seafarers, deploying those systems across hundreds of vessels worldwide. And before Scoutbase, Yassin worked as an independent design consultant with major organizations, including Lloyds Bank and the NHS, bringing his user-focused approach to diverse product and service challenges. Originally trained in furniture and product design in London, that's interesting, Yassin has consistently focused on creating impactful solutions that put people first. And we'll discuss really in this podcast how this solution is not only improving mental health support for seafarers, but also redefining crew asset management by prioritizing human well-being as a critical component of operational excellence. So, massive intro. Gentlemen, welcome, and nice to see you online here. We are online today. So just to our listeners, there's a little bit of a break. It's down to the internet rather than to us. But welcome to the podcast. Ronald, good to see you again. And
likewise, Sean.
Yeah, and I look forward to catching up a lot during the year as well. And Yassin, nice to meet you as well from sunny Copenhagen, I understand.
Nice to meet you too. Yes, the sun is out in Copenhagen for the first time in what feels like months. So happy to meet you and happy to see the sun again.
Well, excellent. Well, let's get going and let's get started on this. And Ronald, can I bring you in on this first of all, and really talk about this shift towards a proactive healthcare management? And what does this mean for shipping and for the maritime industry, and why is it sort of becoming more important? Give us your sort of thoughts on this, because to a lot of our listeners, this might be sort of new territory for them.
Yeah, well, two things on that, Sean, and thanks for the intro. I'm very impressed in the way you portray us here. But what becomes more and more interesting for ship owners is the awareness that crew should be treated as a very valuable asset, right? And I often make the joke that no chief engineer would just run the engine until it breaks down and then call a specialist. And yet that is exactly what we tend to do with our human assets. And as they are more and more important for any ship owner, we should have something like similar to preventive maintenance on a technical asset. We should have preventive maintenance on the human asset. And that is what proactive healthcare is. So make sure that they don't break down, make sure that they don't get ill. And why is this getting more important? That's what your question is. Well, we all know that a shortage of seafarers is building up already for a few years. Seafaring seems to be a less and less attractive proposition, even in the historical seafaring nations. And that leads to unwanted situations in the future if we don't take action. So we should make sure that they're getting more attractive to get to sea, and also that we becoming an attractive workplace. And there's another aspect to this. In your intro, you said we are doing digitalization at sea via satellite for years already. And what digitalization does and what the ongoing regulation does, which on its turn is driving digitalization and the formation of apps and the likes of, is that you need to train and invest more and more in your people to keep them up to speed with all the digital efforts at sea. So there's no way that you can take somebody from a marine institute and put them on a vessel and that's it, right? You need to continuously invest in the people and train them, which makes it even more important than ever to keep them once you have them, right? And in that way, it is outdated that you just let them work, sleep, and repeat. But we need to make sure that they drive. And in that way, proactive healthcare is getting more important. And that's what we do.
I mean, the one thing about, and before I bring in Yassin, and I'll get your views in a second, Yassin, but we talk about the seafarer community being an aging community as well, sedentary, working long hours and what have you. And I think, is that putting a lot more pressure or more need on the industry to start to actually tackle these issues?
Definitely. Because especially when people are getting older, especially as well if they are working long years in a hostile environment like what shipping is, and think about the lack of sleep, the shift work, but also the sound and the air pollution and the lack of exercise and whatever. Eventually, people are building up chronic diseases that you see everywhere. And they are either cardiovascular, or they are hypertension, or they are diabetes. Currently, in the shipping industry, if you're building up chronic diseases like these, then you're at risk of losing your license as an officer. So it is important that they are not building up those. And if they are building up those chronic diseases, then they appear after their 45th, 50th year. And that is the time when they are the most valuable on the bridge or on the vessel. So it is not only a costly exercise to find new people that are very well suited to your company, it's also a massive drain of experience on the vessel. And that has on itself an effect on the risk profile, the health risk profile of the vessel, and eventually on your premium for insurance and things like that. So there is a drive to keep the people where they are and support them, not getting ill, but even if they are getting some kind of chronic disease, still monitor them and keep them where they are. 20% of the CEOs in the world are building up hypertension and none of them are losing their job. So why would a captain in that way? So that paints the picture, right?
So looking on this proactive side, how is it going to be different? How will it differ from the traditional reactive approaches that we've seen? Because you are right. If you look at, say, different nationalities, for instance, Filipinos, at home would normally have 1 or 2 bowls of rice a day. On board ship, they might have 4 or 5. The starches are then going to be turned to sugars, and they might get then diabetes. So you get all of these issues going on, and that's really where proactive management side comes in and is very effective. How is it going to differ from what is happening in the industry at the moment?
Well, when we started designing our services, we wanted to make sure that we could start building up a trust relationship with the people on board. So it's not only important that we see the faces and they see the faces of the doctors and the nurses on the other side. It's also important that they can reach each other when they are at sea. So it's important that the doctors, or in our case, we call them the house doctors, are building up a trust relationship with the people on board. They are becoming the medical buddy for the captain, calling them every month to go through all the issues that he sees on board. So engagement and trust is a major component of proactivity. But also think about awareness and training and monitoring to see, well, monitoring in case of chronic diseases. But think about awareness, mental health trainings, making officers aware of the early signs of depression and anxiety, and also make them aware what can be done about it. Uh, those are all components of proactivity. And then, most of all, currently, if somebody is developing a disease at sea, they have to go to the captain, and the captain has to make a judgment call in between his limited medical knowledge or the cost to call an SOS service. So removing those two barriers, one, to become the medical buddy, so he knows who to call to, or that he can talk to every month. And second, take away the financial barrier for a call by just doing anything flat fee, so that it doesn't matter whether he's calling his medical buddy once a month or every day. And also for seafarers, taking away that barrier to seek help in a very early stage is making all the difference. Because if those barriers are staying in place as they currently are, almost any medical issue becomes a kind of a crisis situation. And the earlier you are recognizing the signs, the earlier you are with intervening when things are developing, the bigger the chances are that it doesn't end up in a crisis. And that's what proactive healthcare is.
Now, you talked about mental health issues there, and also there's hypertension and stuff like that we talked about.
Mhm.
But what are the sort of the biggest health challenges that you're coming across, would you say, with seafarers today? Is it diet related? Is it age related? Is it stress related?
Well, we covered the physical issues that are developing over time, but currently more and more what you see is mental well-being, which is at stake. So, and there you think about depression, anxiety, and in the ultimate cases, you see suicides happening. And well, we believe that there's a lack of proper planned strategic social investment on board of the vessels. And think for years, you mentioned I come from the satellite industry, right? For years, people were treating internet access more as a tick box than as a solution of something, right? So ship managers, they give internet to the people and then thinking that everything is fine because they can continue their social life. And that is true. So it ticks a box for sure. But it also opens the seafarer for anything that goes wrong at home, right? And if you are not compensating those things with a social, active environment on board, then you will only end up with seafarers that are locking themselves up in their cabin and are developing depression. So there should be also social investment so that the people on board, right, are almost like, well, developing a family away from the family, right? So they can talk to each other about these things. And that is important, I think. So other than a blessing, giving everyone internet to follow social media at home also has a darker side. And that is that it is easier to develop depressions if you feel alone, right?
Yeah.
Because
I think these are valid points. And I think, the industry's been sort of grappling with this for a few years now, where you look at the impact of internet and texting and what have you, when the seafarers should be resting in their rest hours and what have you, and also does it create more anxiety because they're finding out things about what's happening at home and they want to be at home with their family. They need that connectivity, as you say. I want to ask you one question now and then bring in Yassin, and thank you for being patient there, Yassin, and everything in Copenhagen. But looking at AI now, artificial intelligence, how is it being integrated into the sort of the ecosystem, healthcare ecosystem, and what are its key applications? If you can give me some your perspective, Ronald, and then I'll go on to Yassin as well. But
yeah.
What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I will keep it then to fundamentals where Jess can go into details. But for me, the most important developments that AI brings is, on one hand, it is quick learning, capability to benchmark quickly, to compare much more data instantly with each other than any human being could do, and the capability to make it personal, right? To compare personal behavior and insights with the world statistics in terms of healthcare costs or risk to develop chronic diseases, for instance. So for me, AI gives a doctor or a nurse on our side much more capabilities to come with personal advice. And that personal advice can on its term be aggregated to company-wide well-being programs or things like that are much more tailored to the actual need of the people in question. And that is what AI does. So it learns and it advises us on how to do better. And it's not replacing our doctors. It is just making them more capable, quicker, and more personal.
And I suppose, I mean, in my intro, I talked about your technology, offering anonymous real-time wellness data collection, so that they do have that facility there, that it is anonymous. It is, they can feel more comfortable in giving the information up.
Yes, it is. And yes, we'll no doubt dive into that. But it's our experience that people are opening up more to AI rather than to a human being because it's non-judgmental in nature, right? So maybe Jess, you can kick in there. You are the one developing this service with us and for us.
Exactly. And I think your question is excellent, Sean, because how AI is integrated into the maritime healthcare ecosystem is really dependent on, because there's multiple ways of doing that. It could be wearables, right? Some companies are giving seafarers wearables so they can track their, you could say their biometrics, so they know how they're doing on a physical level. And what we do is we want to understand how they're doing on a sort of emotional level, right? And the way we do that, the way we use AI, just to give a very clear practical example, is that we have conversations with the seafarers, right? We have ongoing conversations and we use AI to do that. And our system automatically essentially engages with every crew member in their native language. So our system speaks 200 languages, meaning that they get questions in their own native language, which again, as Ronald said, it makes them feel more open because it's sort of speaking to you on your terms, right? And that's also what makes it inclusive, right? It's including you, meeting you where you are, right? And trying to understand from your experience how things are going, right? And it's really through those conversations, those continuous ongoing conversations, that we learn about what's essentially how people are feeling and what's going on board. And really what we then do is that we automatically analyze all that data on the dashboard and share those directly with the decision makers within the organization so they know exactly what they need to do, right? So the AI also advises them on the actions that they need to take and gives them essentially all of the data summarized so they don't need to spend time analyzing all of those incoming data from the crew, right? So that's really how AI can really automatically engage with crew and then essentially summarize and distill all those insights so that it's easier for the decision makers to give crew support. So it's also a way of doing it much more efficiently and smoother and giving them exactly the tools that is going to help the crew have a better outcomes, right? That's really what it's all about. It's AI needs to help workers, crew get better outcomes.
So would you have every crew member, and through the partnership, I guess, with VIKAND that you've got, that they will then get logged into the AI assessment, this AI interaction? Would that be like on a monthly basis, or would it be an initial discussion through the AI system, and then anything that gets thrown up would then be followed up through the AI process and through your
Exactly that. So we can essentially what we do once the AI has conversations with each individual crew member, it can automatically signpost while having the conversations with the individual, right? So if through the conversation you can detect, okay, here's an individual that needs support, it essentially nudges them to get in touch with a VIKAND psychologist, right? Simply by pressing a link. And secondly, once that information comes into the dashboard, It also does automatic risk analysis. So it can say whether it's a low risk conversation, a high risk information that's been shared. And if it's something over moderate, it automatically gets signposted as well to a VIKAND psychologist. So all of that happens automatically. So the conversations are automatic essentially with the AI. And all of the risk analysis, the data analysis also happens automatically. So because essentially what we want to do is we want to really support the crew members as close as possible. So if anything is detected as being serious, we want to give them the right support at the right time so that they feel heard, they feel valued, and they feel that essentially someone is listening. Our system, what it does, it doesn't have conversations every day. It checks in on you once every 2 to 3 days. And we just want it to feel like someone is actually there for you. Someone is listening, that someone is checking in on you. And we're trying to give it a human experience without it necessarily being human, but there's always human in the loop. And I think that's really another important element of how AI is being used now and then how we see it being used in the upcoming years is that it's really important when it comes to human problems, there's always a human being in the loop, right? And that's really where our partnership with VIKAND makes a lot of sense because they have a brilliant team of psychologists that are there to essentially pick up any leading indicators that the crew might have shared when it comes to how they're feeling or the challenges that they're experiencing, right?
Well, Ron, let me bring you in on this, Ron. What are your thoughts?
Well, imagine, Sean, that we, for a long time, we do annual wellness reviews with the crew on board. That's annual, right? And it's very manual and labor intensive, but most of it's annual. So what we now have is something that is real time. You don't have to wait until a wellness review to understand how your crew is doing. The dashboard that Jess describes is building up as we speak. So in a matter of days, you see a dashboard building up as a ship manager about the mental well-being of your people on a vessel, whereby real time you can make decisions if there are trends popping up that are flagged by AI. You can benchmark your vessels because one vessel may do better than others. You can benchmark your fleet with the global statistics. So you don't have to wait until there's a wellness review to understand the mental state of the people on your vessel. And that is the most powerful improvement, I think. It's real time and it allows you to swiftly take decisions. Whenever I speak to ship managers about this, I see the lights in their eyes popping up because it is the most common theme for any ship manager, understanding what is happening on board. Well, this anonymized wellness review is helping them tremendously for that.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's the reaction from the market, from the client base? Because I think post COVID or during COVID, that really focused the attention on the importance of well-being for seafarers, the mental well-being for seafarers as well. That it really started to bring that into the debate.
Imagine, Sean, we do mental fit for duty reviews. So after a PME, the seafarers get a PME, a pre-embarkation medical examination, right? That declares them fit for duty. Then we do mental reviews of those PMEs together with an interview with the seafarer to get a mental picture of them and declare them mentally fit for duty. But then still, that is a snapshot. We had a conversation with a crew manager, Jess and me, a while ago, who had an issue of a seafarer that developed a mental disorder to the tune that they had to lock him up in his cabin and offload him to a mental hospital in a port a week later. And I asked him, did you see it coming? And he didn't, right? The PME was all right. The guy was in perfect order. And 4 weeks later, bang. And so it is important that you get a real-time pulse or a finger on the pulse because anything may happen during the voyage, and that can be triggered by the people on the vessel or the work. It can be triggered by something from home that nobody was aware about. But just having a survey or a once-a-year interview is never going to give you early signs of mental disorders developing on board. But a trend in the pulse, maybe they suddenly stop reacting or the answers are getting completely in the wrong direction, right? Then AI will pick that up far before it actually becomes a crisis, as I said.
That's a really, really important development there. Bringing Yassin on this, if AI is able to predict or flag up issues that are likely to happen way ahead of time, goodness me, that's prevention is always better than cure, and is there to look after the seafare. But what sort of types of data is the system looking for, would you say? It will have a goal, won't it? It will be asking certain questions to get to a certain end result.
Exactly. So the type of, you could say, insights that the system is looking for is essentially what we tell it to look for, right? And we tell it to look for certain markers, indicators that we know have caused issues previously, right? And
Yeah.
we know this because we studied a lot of literature on this. We've looked at accident reports, we looked at well-being reports, and we've essentially designed some questions around these indicators so we know exactly what to probe and essentially what to monitor, right? Because it's a monitoring system. And not too dissimilar from what Ronald used before, the analogy that Ronald used before is now machines on board, right? Like the engine is being continuously monitored, right? You can detect when something is going off. It's exactly the same thing that we do. We just essentially, we talk to the crew members. We have automated conversations, as I said before. And it's really through those conversations that we can automatically detect what's going on, right? And specific things that we look for how are they eating? How are they sleeping? What's the work environment on board? Are they overworked? What's the team dynamics on board? Because all of these things impact, it's really the working environment, the living and working environment when it comes to crew that are essentially impacting their well-being, right? Or can impact their well-being. So we're looking for all of these markers to understand a 360 view. How are essentially the crew doing, right? And if something comes up, as I said before, that's really where we advise and help the organization to spring into action via the recommendations that we give on the dashboard, right? So really it can be anything from sleep, how work, how they eat. All of these things are really important to understand essentially how crew are doing, right? And it's not too dissimilar from our own lives. All of these things also can impact us just living our normal lives, in quotation marks, going into the office. All of these things can have an impact on how we feel as well. And we are always in the spectrum of from struggling to thriving. We're in between, somewhere in that spectrum, right? And so we know that that's how it is. So it's about really understanding where we are. So helping the organization understand where is your crew in the spectrum, right? And which indicators is it that essentially are tipping them to one in different directions, right? So essentially that's really what it is. It's about knowing and understanding how they're doing, and then giving them the right support when they need it, right? That's really essentially what our system does. And how I see AI in general doing is really sort of not only when it comes to sort of like understanding, capturing data, but it's also about personalizing outcomes and really supporting the individual with exactly what they need, right? To give them the outcomes that they essentially require, right? And the organization requires, which is to have,
And the way you do it, Jazz, in my view, you are getting a more intuitive answer on any question rather than setting somebody up saying tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock you have a wellness review, right?
Yeah.
Because then they are making up their minds and thinking about it. While what you need for mental analysis is an intuitive answer on a question. And those questions are coming, as Jess said, maybe twice a week. It comes at random times, so it takes you at a time, and it's so easy to answer. It takes your intuitive answers, and that is important in this case.
Definitely. So I think it's really important to make it accessible for crews so everyone can participate firstly, right? And that everyone feels that they have an opportunity to be heard, right? That's really important. That's a human need. And that's really like what's key about this is really enabling them to open up and to share what's going on, right? So that's really the essence of it. And that's how we learn, right? That's how we identify how people are feeling. And that's really what gives us is through those identification process, if you will, that gives us an opportunity to remedy any potential issues that can be on board.
And that plays in on the trust and the relationship building, right? So this is not to monitor people just for the sake of it. This is really to understand what drives them and make the situation better. And that building of trust is important here. And I think it's an important stepping stone to have this on their phones and give these answers. I think we are on about an 80% response levels here. While these are response levels that are unheard of with any conventional type of survey. So, yeah.
No, that's very high, 80%. That's very, very good.
It is. It is. But that just shows how easy it is and how intuitive the answers can be given.
But it's interesting. Somebody, I remember chatting to somebody a couple of years ago, looking at, seafarers on board ship and how they deal with their medical issues, and seafarers going on there who take a tablet, once a day for cholesterol or for high blood pressure, we'll maybe get nagged at home to do it, but on board ship, well, I feel fine. I don't need to take it. Everything's great. They need to take that tablet. And I think that trust, that sort of mindset change is something that's going to be a positive knock-on effect of this as well, that you've got somebody there interacting with you on a regular basis, making sure that you are prioritizing your health.
Yeah, it's trust and it's empathy as well. If you know that you always are supported by the same person or the same team, it build that have an empathy on what you're doing and how you're doing. In VIKAND, all our doctors have been sailing themselves, so they know what it is to be on a vessel and the circumstances you're in. And it's just proven that a little bit of empathy is giving a magnificent effect on following up the advices that they get.
Yeah.
And in that spectrum displays an enormous goal.
Just asking both of you, how the seafarers and the maritime community are reacting to AI-driven tools, but also, do you have any sort of case studies or success stories where it's sort of borne through? Yes, do you want to have a little go at that and then bring it on?
Honestly, yeah, from our experience it's been positive the way that they've reacted, because we essentially last year, we completely rebuilt our product to be AI first, both in terms of how we engage with crew, but also how we analyze the data that comes in from crew, or you could say analyze the conversations that we have with crew. And so I think from a crew point of view, it's been positive because it is smarter than what we had previously, right? So it talks to you, it responds to what you write and type, which is really important. And it speaks your own language, right? So I think those things have really created, or you could say that's increased engagement. They is more engaged with this than they were previously. And so that's one thing. I think how you could say organizations that we speak to in general are reacting to it is it really differs, right? That it's a bit odd and a bit weird talking to an AI. We've heard that, which is completely understandable. It is still something new, something to get used to. But in many ways, it really is just a smart way of doing automated surveys, if you will, right? It just feels different, but essentially it's really all about understanding how our crews are doing at sea. Yeah. And I think that's really essential. So I think I see that as, I think the barriers of the understanding of AI is going to get better and better, right? And that makes people feel safer around it. And so that's one thing. And really just understanding the value that it can give you, right? That it can actually make things, it can make you understand things quicker. It can quicker distill insights and data. So I think with time, more organizations are going to really understand how powerful it can be, specifically when it comes to human data, which is really what we're talking about here. And that's really challenging, right? So it's one thing tapping into a machine and getting that data automated, because it doesn't really, it's a machine, right? But here we're talking about people, right? And people are more complex, and really getting that complex data, those conversations, those free-form conversations that we have, and then distilling them into something that is structured, that is meaningful, and that can help organizations essentially get a guidance or a roadmap for where the challenges are, and to support them in delivering these outcomes to crew. That's really what it does really, really well, right? So that's really the benefit of it. And I think that's going to become more and more obvious. But we also see companies that just have a different maturity level and that are just ready to embark on this AI journey straight away, right? So we really see we've experienced the whole spectrum, right? And things about feeling safe, really. It's about making them understand it's just a tool to help you do what you're already doing better, essentially, right? That's
Ronald, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I would hook on to the language thing here. And so don't underestimate that, because we use AI or artificial intelligence, and that sounds very highbrow and technical. But don't underestimate the effect that it has, that if you suddenly get the questions in your mother tongue, right? Because for most of us, English is a second language. But if you have to talk about your feelings, right, then your mother tongue is a much better expression. And you will notice it if you suddenly get questions in your mother tongue, that the way you are standing towards that question is already different than whether you get it in English. And don't underestimate that effect, is what I wanted to say. Right?
And I think that is such a plus point. I mean, it is about humanizing the process,
Yes.
but also then deriving the massive benefits that AI is going to drive out of it as well, which I can really see that. Yes, any examples of good case studies or anything there where you've seen some good successes?
Yeah, I mean, we have recently with one of our customers essentially detected several individuals on board where we could see, based on their response patterns, that these were high risk crew, right? So these were crew members that were really experiencing issues on board based on their responses. And what our AI does on the dashboard side is it does automated sentiment analysis and risk analysis. And we can look at that on a vessel level, but we can also look at that on an individual level. And we've seen individuals on specific vessels that we could see here is definitely where the AI said, well, here's a high risk individual based on their response patterns over a certain amount of time, right? And that information is what the customers in the organization can see. So they can quickly step in. They can reply to individual directly, right? And then say, well, support is available. If you need any help, here's where you can get help. It gives them an opportunity to give the individual some support and help based on just understanding and looking at those response patterns, right? And that's really what flagged up. And so that's a really sort of concrete, good example of how it can be used, is that it automatically gives you a flag and says, hey, here's something that's not right, and then gives them advice on what to do. And one of those advices can be just make sure that they understand that where they can re-support, send them a link, give them an opportunity to call you if they feel safe and secure in doing that. I just want to add as well that our platform is 100% anonymous, so that they don't know who the crew member is. They know which crew member, like which vessel that they work on. So the ability to reply and respond anonymously is really key here, right? Because it helps them continue to maintain that safe space where they can essentially have a further conversation. So it's not having a conversation with the AI now, but it's having a conversation with the human, right? That can respond and give them the right support, right? So that's really a sort of one of the concrete examples that I can give here.
Okay, finally, really, I mean, we are where we are now, and this is exciting technology and development, and you can really see the benefit. But AI is going to continue to advance, and it's going to continue to develop. And really, just to start with you, Ronald, then come on to Yasmin as the final point here. Looking to the next 5 to 10 years, what advancements do you see in AI or in technology that are you anticipating that's going to revolutionize proactive healthcare? How excited are you, Ronald? Give me your first.
I'm convinced it will. And so we talk mostly about mental health, but there's a big physical health aspect as well. As we started the conversation, I think the use of AI is enabling a route towards a much more personalized advice cycle, so that almost your phone is becoming your health companion wherever you go, right? And then based on your behaviors, based on your lifestyle, based on monitoring of your sleep pattern, for instance, is allowing healthcare providers to really personalize their advice on how to stay healthy wherever they are. And that is definitely a path that we're going on to. And as Yassin started saying that the mobile phone, it developed software and hardware that allows us to measure anything on your body, your behavior, and your well-being that can be turned into advice. I think that's where we go. And not only on a once in a while basis, but just real time.
But certainly on the mental health issue as well. I mean, this is a real focus here that it can really, really start to help on that side of it.
But if you're talking about wearables and monitoring, think about the quality of sleep. It's not necessarily the length of sleep, but the quality of sleep. And if for a long period you are lacking good quality of sleep and still have to do your shift work, well, how dangerous is that? So if real time you can get your advice that over the last 3 days actually you didn't sleep enough, right? Which I'm just making them up, not because they don't exist, they all exist, but I think they become more common good to be used on board of vessels, so that AI is turning healthcare into something personal and predictive. That's what.
Let me bring in you for your thoughts on this. You're a tech innovator. How do you see AI developing and innovating over the next 5 to 10 years? What are your exciting thought processes?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, like the speed of development, it's even hard to know. I mean, it seems like every month there's a better AI model that comes out, you know. So how it's going to look in 5 to 10 years, it's really, I mean, I think we're going to be in a completely different place than where we are now. And it's can't even be hard for me to imagine based on the speed of development currently. I mean, when you look at OpenAI and Anthropic and all of these other AI labs, they are just putting out new models on a weekly basis almost, right? So it's extremely fast paced. But I want to think specifically when it comes to healthcare and mental well-being. I think AI is really going to be more and more personalized as they can help personalize remedy and essentially support for individuals to an even greater extent than what it can do today. And I think secondly, it's also really, I think we should almost start to see it as much more of a co-pilot to the doctor or to the psychologist, right? So essentially, it's still going to be in 5 to 10 years. It's not going to be completely automated to the sense that it can fix human problems. I really don't believe that. I think we're always going to rely on the humans that are experts and that are trained to deal with and to support people when it comes to their health and well-being. And so I think it's going to be the best possible co-pilot to doctors and psychologists, right? To make them more efficient, to give them the support that they need to help more people, right? And then when we look at healthcare in general, it is stretched in many ways, right? There's a lot of challenges when it comes to not having enough doctors and psychologists. So I think it's going to help those that are doing a great job already do an even better job, right? By giving them the tools to support more people, to support workers, crew, specifically those in remote industries, even better than what we can do today.
Gentlemen, thank you very, very much indeed for your time today. This is fascinating stuff, and it's really, really good to see these sort of efforts here to leverage the power of AI in making a safer, healthier, more supportive environment for seafarers. It's a fascinating thing. It's something that's long overdue, I think, in the industry, and certainly we're going to be sort of keeping a close eye on the developments over the next few months and years as well. But thank you very, very much indeed for your time today, Ronald and Yas. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thanks for having us, and see you soon again.
Thank you.